What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. So today I'm bringing to you a first look at a brand new archetype that's going to be released in the OCG called the Skyfang Brigade. Now this is a pirate-themed archetype, which is really cool. The artwork on these cards is absolutely awesome, and a lot of people wanted me to discuss the competitive viability of an archetype like this because a lot of people are very hyped for this. Now this is going to be released in a set called Deck Build Pack Dark Sabers, which is the kind of equivalent here in the TCG to something like Spirit Warriors or High Speed Riders, or one of those sets that we get in between main sets. So before we get into that, if you guys can, be sure to hit that bell on YouTube to get all the notifications from YouTube every single time I upload a video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. We're just going to go ahead and cover all of the cards and their effects and kind of discuss the practicality of this archetype in a competitive setting. So starting off with Beat, Swordsman of the Skyfang Brigade, and apologies for looking off screen, but there's a lot of text here and I want to make sure I cover everything properly. So Beat, Swordsman of the Skyfang Brigade, it's an Earth level 3 warrior, it's a Rota target, that's very important, and 1200 attack, 500 defense. During your main phase, you can special summon one Skyfang Brigade monster from your hand, except Beat, Swordsman of the Skyfang Brigade. So all of the Skyfang Brigade that are normal summonable, so pretty much all that are level 4 and lower at the current moment, have this effect that once per turn you can special summon another one of a different name. Now keep in mind that there's no level restriction or anything on that, so that means that you can special summon the higher level ones, which we'll get into later as well, but that's very important. If another Skyfang Brigade monster is special summoned to your field, while this monster is on the field, you can add one Skyfang Brigade monster from your deck to your hand, except Beat, Swordsman of the Skyfang Brigade. You can only use each effect of Beat, Swordsman of the Skyfang Brigade once per turn. Okay, so they all have the effect that you can only use their effects once per turn, so do keep that in mind, but Beat is essentially the recruiter for the deck. So if you already have Beat on the field, you can use its first effect to special summon another one out of your hand, and then you can trigger Beat's second effect to recruit another Skyfang Brigade monster from your deck. So you're definitely going to want to play 3 of this card for sure, just solely on the fact that it's going to be recruiting cards. It's also cool because even though it's once per turn, you can also trigger this on your opponent's turn as well if you're able to special summon another Skyfang Brigade monster to your field during your opponent's turn, which means you can maximize on adding more Skyfang Brigade cards to your hand. So as you're looking at this, you're kind of probably starting to draw comparisons to this deck in comparison to like Yosenju, because it kind of seems like all these cards are going to be just, vomiting their hand onto the field, and that's kind of the first thing I want to compare this to. There's also kind of a Magical Musketeers element to it as well, because it's kind of relying on the normal summon, but at the same time, it allows you to just recruit a ton of advantage in a very similar sense. So that's it for Beat. Now we're going to move on to Blavo, Fighter of the Skyfang Brigade. So he's a Fire Reptile, level 4, 1900 attack. I really like the body on him. And again, same effect as before, where you can special summon, and his effect is if another Skyfang Brigade monster is special summoned to your field while this is on the field, you can make all Skyfang Brigade monsters on the field gain 500 attack and defense till the end of the turn. So that means Blavo would go to 24, Beat would go up to 17, their boss monster goes up to 3,300. This is really cool. It's not permanent or anything, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's nice that you just get the extra attack boost. I'm sure that would help with OTKs and also just beating over things that are a little bit difficult to beat over. So you're definitely going to want to include him in some way, shape, or form, I imagine. Just solid card all around. Now we get on to Recon Sky Scout of the Skyfang Brigade. So it's a Wind Beast level 2, which means theoretically you could use Obedience School, but then you're locked out of special summoning for the rest of the turn, so I would not recommend that in the least. His effect is, when you special summon another Skyfang Brigade while it's on the field, you can target one set card on the field and destroy it. And in that same note, we have Donpa, Marksman of the Skyfang Brigade. Exact same stats for the most part, and the same effect, except instead of targeting a set card, it can target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. Now, both of these are incredibly powerful because this is where you're going to be generating a ton of your advantage. So not only are you able to pop sets or face-ups during your turn, but again, like I mentioned before with Beat, you're able to, if you can special summon during your opponent's turn, these two act as a very powerful form of disruption, because if they're both on the field and you special summon another Skyfang, you're able to pop 2 cards cards on your opponent's side of the field. So that's a really, really big deal if you're able to pull it off in that sense. Their stats aren't really too good, but ultimately because of the fact that they have the ability to just disrupt your opponent and pop cards, kind of in a similar way to like say like Spiral Tough or Spiral Super Agent, it's a little bit more conditional than that, but it's a good way to pretty much just generate advantage and keep yourself ahead on tempo. Now moving on to the big Skyfang Brigade, starting off with the boss monster, Lafarl, Hero of the Skyfang Brigade. If this card is special summoned, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of Skyfang Brigade monsters you control with different names other than itself, add one of them to your hand, also shuffle the rest back into the deck. So basically, if you have two other Skyfang Brigade monsters on the field when you special summon this, you excavate the top two cards of your deck, you add one to your hand and shuffle the other one back. Now keep in mind, you don't have to add a Skyfang Brigade card on this effect. It's literally any card. So basically when you summon Lafarl, as long as you have another Skyfang Brigade monster on the field, it's free advantage. And you have to keep in mind that you can just special summon this at the end of any chain of summoning your other Skyfang Brigade cards. So you could summon like 4 of them, put him on the end, and then you're able to excavate for 4, add one of those cards to your hand. And you're going to be wanting to have cards in your hand as well for his second effect, which we'll get right into, because his other effect reads, when your opponent activates a monster effect as a quick effect, you can discard one Skyfang Brigade card, negate the activation. So it basically acts as a pseudo solemn strike type effect. It doesn't destroy the card, so do keep that in mind, but the fact that it can negate a monster effect is incredibly powerful. That acts as a very good form of disruption for your opponent's turn. So if you're able to get Lafarl on the field on your opening play or at some point, then you're going to be able to at least prevent your opponent from advancing their board state moving forward. Now that brings us into Wiz Sage of the Skyfang Brigade as well. So Wiz is very similar to Lafarl, except instead of being able to negate monster effects, Wiz can negate spell and trap effects by discarding a Skyfang Brigade card as well. So if you're able to summon both of these to the field, which is possible in some instances, then you're gonna have a nice little soft lock on your opponent, because then you're gonna be able to negate a monster effect as well as a spell and trap effect as well. It kind of sucks that they're only once per turn, but I guess to be a little bit broken if they weren't. In addition to that, Wiz's effect is, if this card is special summoned, you gain 500 life points for each Skyfang Brigade monster you control with a different name except itself. So a little bit of life point gain is not too bad. I guess if you're going into time, that could be useful. I wouldn't see yourself really running more than one copy of this card unless you're just trying to just completely turbo it out. Like Lafarl is way better by a long shot, but Wiz is okay. I think Wiz, because it's searchable, you pretty much just want to play the one, and if you're able to get it out, then you're able to get it out. Now last but not least for the monsters, we have Sagitta, Solitary of the Skyfang Brigade. This is probably, in my opinion, the worst of all the cards. If it's special summon, you inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each Skyfang Brigade. So similar to Wiz, except you're dealing damage to your opponent rather than gaining it yourself. I guess that could be useful in time, but not really the most practical effect. And then basically, if your opponent can't target Skyfang Brigade monsters you control with card effects except Sagitta. So it kind of acts like a Spiral Resort in a way where you can only target it, but again, it doesn't really offer enough to warrant running, in my opinion. I just think it's too weak, and you'd rather just want to spend your resources summoning Lafarl or Wiz in comparison to Sagitta. Now obviously, protection from targeting is strong, but once that's turned off, which is very easy nowadays, I just don't think it's worth it. I think Lafarl and Wiz just have much more flexibility in that aspect. We also did get a spell and trap card in addition to that. We have Dragon Airship Phandra. Now, this card I thought was absolutely fucking busted until they actually had the correct translation, but we'll discuss that in a minute. So during your draw phase, before you draw, you can give up your normal draw this turn, and if you do, add one Skyfang Brigade monster from your deck to your hand. Now, originally, there wasn't the part where you have to skip your draw phase. Originally, it said before you draw, add one Skyfang Brigade card from your deck to your hand, which meant you would not only get to add, but then you would still have your normal draw, meaning it was kind of like Grand Spellbook Tower in a way, but unfortunately that's not the case, so I don't think this card is as good. Its second effect is alright as well. If you control 5 or more Skyfang Brigade monsters with different names, send this card to the graveyard, destroy all cards your opponent controls. Also, your opponent takes no damage for the rest of the turn. So it's a nice board wipe, but you can't kill your opponent the turn that you do it, so it doesn't really, you know, it's almost like too fair in my opinion. And I feel like if the first effect to add a card from your deck to your hand and then draw was a thing, then you could play stuff like Metaverse to get this card on the field during your opponent's end phase, and then you could basically reap the benefits of being able to draw 2 cards at the start of your turn. But unfortunately, that's not the case. I don't really know if this card's worth running because frankly, you have to play the field spell, hope it doesn't get destroyed, and then you not only have to relinquish your draw, but then you have to add a Skyfang Brigade card to your hand instead. I really don't think that's worth it to make this card worth running, but I could be wrong. Maybe the board wipe effect might be worth it, but I just think it just seems too fair in my opinion. And last but not least, we have the trap card Skyfang Brigade Training. If a Skyfang Brigade monster you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, target one of those monsters, special summon one Skyfang Brigade monster from your deck with a level less than that monster's original level. So basically, if Lafarl, who's level 8, is destroyed, that would be what you target technically, and then you can special summon any Skyfang Brigade card that has a level lower than Lafarl, and basically you can apply that to anything. What really sucks about this card is that you have to wait for your opponent to destroy one of your cards by battle or card effect. Basically, the whole purpose of this card is that you can trigger the effects of your Skyfang Brigade cards during your opponent's turn, but it's conditional on your opponent triggering this card for that to happen, and I don't really think that's too efficient. I think you're much better off playing cards like Call of the Haunted, or Oasis of Dragon Souls, or even Back to the Front, which is probably the best out of the 3, because at least with a card like Back to the Front, or any of the other cards, you have control as to when you want to trigger your Skyfang Brigade cards, where this card is conditional, and basically you have to wait on your opponent to do that, and I think that's just a little bit too slow in that aspect. Now, the thing is, there are some other cards you can run in this deck. Potted Desires can easily be run in this deck simply because of the fact that there's no real combo piece you care about losing off the banish, so you could easily run Potted Desires to generate more card advantage, and obviously for Lafarl and Wiz, you're gonna want those cards to discard for their negation effect, so I definitely think that's warranted running. In others, like, you could also run cards, I guess, like maybe ways to generate additional normal summons, so there's like the Troymare links, Brilliant Fusion, and Seraphinite. It also helps that the Searcher is Earth and Seraphinite is Earth, so you can make like Mrs. Radiant, and then if you use Mrs. Radiant and send it to the graveyard, you can add the Earth's Recruiter back to your hand, so that's pretty nifty. And then you could also maybe run like Scapegoat. I feel like this deck is contingent upon other engines helping facilitate its plays, because with Scapegoat, you can kind of just summon a bunch of links and really get things going. I think Firewall Dragon would make an excellent addition to this deck, because it would be able to help you get multiple of the big boss monsters onto the field, like Lafarl and Wiz, so then that way you can negate 2 cards during your opponent's turn, and that kind of helps get everything going. But the biggest thing I kind of feel about this archetype, and I don't know if you guys feel this as well, this archetype almost feels too fair. Like, everything has like a generically good effect. Like, you have a Searcher, you've got a card that pumps cards up by attack value, you know, you've got stuff that can pop face up cards, face down cards, you know, it has like all of the elements of a good archetype, but it's held back by the fact that everything can only be used once per turn, or, you know, it's just, everything has like a restriction that prevents it from being like utterly broken in comparison to some other archetypes that we've seen in the past. Now, to be fair, we're not going to be getting this archetype for several months, and who knows where the meta is going to be at that point, but it kind of falls in line with archetypes like Yosenju as well as Magical Musketeers, in that sense that these are very interesting control decks, but at the same time, with the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very aggressive game. I mean, control decks have a very difficult time thriving because games end so quickly, and because a deck like this is very fragile in the sense that if its normal summon gets stopped, or you're able to basically stop the chain of special summons, very similarly to how if you stop the chain of normal summons with Yosenju, or if you stop the first card in Magical Musketeers, the deck kind of falls apart. But it has everything that it needs to be a good archetype. I just think it's really held back by the fact that Konami almost just wanted to make like a fair archetype that was really cool and just had some really awesome artwork. But guys, those are just my thoughts in a first introduction to Skyfang Brigade. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this new archetype and how you think it might see any competitive play. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. And if you found this video helpful, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.